think we have made landing on YouTube, and as soon as we have confirmation from the crew, we'll get cooking.
Do you ever watch Canadian Patriot on YouTube?
No.
Very good then.
Tell me about Canadian Patriot while we wait. Up, Zaralath is here, Thor is here, Christy Crinkle, the Puma. We got a crowd now.
Awesome.
Tell us all about Canadian Patriot while we let a few more people in.
I don't know that I'm going to do it.
Watch Canadian Patriot.
So meta. It seems to be he just goes really deep on like deep history and like kind of like minutia, and then bringing in, of course, like secret societies and the occult. It's just another version of that, but his breadth of knowledge is awesome. So I'm allowing him to catch me up to speed on some of my history because I was educated in California and therefore know nothing about anything.
What schools did you go to other than Montclair? Like, I know you went to Montclair, but where else did you go?
So I went to Woodcrest for elementary.
Is that public or private?
They were all private.
Okay, Woodcrest.
Then I went to Countryside Prep and I got kicked out when I refused to take computers. And then I went to Montclair. And I was in Montessori school in Santa Monica before that.
Okay. So I went to private school only for elementary school, right? I went to Egremont and Chatsworth. And then I went to Nobel for junior high, and then Cleveland Magnet for a bit, and then Chatsworth High School for a bit. And so Nobel was magnet and Cleveland was magnet, and then Chatsworth was just like regular school. But Chatsworth, Egremont was a very interesting private school. It was definitely like Egremont is like it's French, right? Like it's a French sort of thing. But it was definitely, at least at that time, I can't say for now, more of like a trivium kind of liberal arts education, right? And definitely I could see the difference when I moved to public school, even though I would have kids in like magnet and AP classes that were incredibly intelligent and maybe even did better on tests or had better grades than me. They were just really good at holding on to whatever information they were told that they should think, as opposed to understanding how to think and how to sort of reason and debate in a way that got to some new thing being learned, right? It was a little bit more than just repeaters or stenographers, but there was not, they were not doing the same level of like questioning of authority and all of that kind of stuff that I was doing. And then, you know, when at Chatsworth, even though Chatsworth wasn't magnet, I was in some AP classes. So I could feel that. And then as an adult, right, like I've had friends, again, some of these people way more successful in the real world than I've been, who like I literally had to, on some level, explain the difference between a fact and an opinion to them. Like it was very bizarre, right?
That post Lollipop?
No, long before Lollipop. I mean, some of these were even like, you know, drug friends so they're open to thinking outside of the box, right? But this is where I could tell that early education and that really expansive way of understanding how to reason through something, right? Just did not happen in public school, right? And so like, I remember like I had this one friend who got really, really upset with me because he's like, you're just so fucking confident that you think you know everything. You think you're right about everything. And I was just like, no, I actually don't think I'm right about everything, but there's things that I know I'm right about. And in those I'm confident, right? And also when I have a strongly held opinion, I speak it with authority because I understand the difference between a fact and an opinion. And I know that I'm entitled to my opinion. And also the more certain I am based on understanding the difference between fact and opinion, that my opinion is likely a fact or will one day be proven to be a fact, I can state that with more authority. And so he got so mad. Like I remember we were in the car and we were driving around and he was just super upset. And I had to take it all the way back to, we had to start at the beginning, which is like, we can both agree that this is your car. You may think it looks nice and I may think it looks like shit, but we can both agree it's a car, it's yellow and it's yours, right? And then everything after that, like we were kind of going through, and he was so like violently mad sometimes, but like later, like he was like, I understand what you mean, right? And then like it was kind of right. On some level, thank goodness it happened when we were high, because like I think it might have been like embarrassing on some level for both of us in a weird way otherwise, right? But that's the kind of, and we worked all the way into like very sort of existential ideas about a car that one could have. So it didn't stay, but we had to start from step one. Right. Because once the further out we went, he became more confused about fact and opinion, right? Type of thing. Like it's easy when you take it down to like the circle, the square, and the triangle, and the three primary colors. But then when you start to get into sacred geometry and the different shades on the color spectrum, and things get a little bit more confusing. And the space between fact and opinion is kind of like that.
Yep.
Yeah. So anywho, all right. Now that we've worked the color wheel, time to get down to the matter at hand here. Okay. So where shall we start? We have a couple of video clips. We have a couple of like tweets or Instagram posts, and we have an article.
Let's start with the tweet.
Let's start with the tweet. Okay. So for people who haven't heard, there's been a lot of Jill Stein news this week, and with people having various opinions on it. But I'll go through what the Jill Stein news this week is basically that she got arrested at I think it was Washington. It was either Washington. I think it's Washington University that's in St. Louis, not George Washington, which is in Washington, D.C. She was there campaigning and then was invited to participate in a protest. And so she went to the protest, which is something she's done long before she had a political career. She has been an activist. That is something I know to be true. So she's not like a fake activist, or you know what I mean?
Not just a photo op.
So although some people, including Sticks, say that that's what it is, and I do believe that at a certain point, all activists figure out how to make performance art out of it to get attention on their cause. And some of that is genuine and some of it is maybe not with some people, but like, okay, so she's there, she's participating in the protest. At some point, the police attention on the protest becomes increased, and someone recommends that maybe having her as part of the front line will make them less likely to inflict like violence or do that kind of thing. And that seems to be opposite. They seem to go right after her. She is not a young woman. They knocked her over. She has osteoporosis. She had spent overnight in jail, and whatever. Who knows what like the driver behind all of that really was. But that's what she's been mostly in the news for. But there was two things she did that happened in the background that are significant. The first is which Jeffrey Sachs. I don't know if you know who he is. Do you know who Jeffrey Sachs is?
Doesn't he fund Rumble? Is it Rumble?
No, that's David Sachs.
Okay.
Jeffrey Sachs is a well-known scholar professor from Columbia who is an economist, but who also writes and opines about lots of things. And he's been part of like important sort of like journal or literature pieces that are like think tank government type of things. And he was involved in some of the things that were said about COVID in the very beginning, where he bought it hook, line, and sinker. And then when he realized we had been lied to, he also spoke out and read about that. So he shifted his position, and at great cost to his reputation, because he had to admit he was wrong before and that he had been snowed, and likely him speaking out, they weren't going to like that either. He did that and was very open and honest about it. And he encouraged people to open their mind about questioning what exactly this was and where it came from. But he has also had a lot to say about Ukraine and the Israel-Gaza situation. And he looks at all these things through the lens of as an economist, right? So he's also Jewish, and he's also a professor at Columbia, which is where all of this brouhaha that's going on right now started. He endorsed Jill Stein this week, and there is some people who believe that he may be a person who may be in the candidate to be on the ticket with her. Now, I don't think there's any. Well, fucking shit is so weird right now. Who knows? I don't think there's any likelihood that Jill Stein is going to be president. But this is like probably the most significantly well-respected person from the entirety of the political spectrum that one could imagine her attracting as not only an endorsement, but as a possible running mate to at least make some conversation interesting and to sort of move it from like loony left land into like, well, this is really an anti-war party, right? And sort of an anti-corruption kind of thing. Now, I don't know, like the problem is this, right? Like even the minor things that I might disagree with her on, and I'm not a voting person, so it doesn't matter. But even the minor things I might disagree with her on that one could accept becomes like a total no-go when you hear her use the term, we have a climate emergency, right? So like this is, I do think it's entirely possible she is not even known to her, announced to her, a very system-approved outsider candidate because of the fact that she's climate cuckoo, right? And with all the crazy shit going on in the world that like, she's doing the same harm to her campaign that RFK did to his when he decided to take this ridiculous position on Israel, right? So it's kind of like undercutting herself intentionally to begin with to make sure that no one can take this seriously. Right. But the Jeffrey Sachs piece was kind of interesting. So those were the like so we had the arrest behind the scene. What no one's talking about because the arrest overshadowed that was this Jeffrey Sachs thing, which is kind of interesting because he makes appearances on mainstream media and alternative media and a wide variety of political position kinds of shows, right? And then the last thing was she had this pretty interesting tweet that I haven't really seen anybody else talking about, even though she's been on a lot of media this week based on having been arrested, right? Nobody's talking about the Jeffrey Sachs thing and nobody's talking about this. Public service announcement. The RFK Jr. campaign is collecting ballot access signatures at pro-Palestinian events. RFK Jr. is not a peace candidate. He fully supports the genocide in Gaza. New York and other states only allow you to sign for one candidate. So make sure you know who you're signing for. Okay, so a couple of things. I didn't know that when you're trying to get someone ballot access, that then prevents you from trying to get ballot access for someone else. I know you can only vote for one person, right, in a kind of thing, but I didn't, so that's interesting to know, but I'm not a voting person, so I don't pay that much attention to this. Now, I also saw people at the Fort Worth Arts and Culture Festival that I was, doing cocktail mixology at, collecting ballots for RFK. And the people that I saw doing that look like hippies. And I'm thinking, like, I would be surprised that these people would feel good about being out here doing this. They don't know about his Israel position. They have done a masterful job with the way that media is sort of bifurcated, of completely separating certain issues out and pushing him, and not just him. I'm sure they do with other candidates too, but he's the one you and I have really been on every little bit about with him. That this group sees him as this group sees him as that, this group sees him as this one is that. Like, these people have no idea how, not just what his position is, but how much of a lunatic he turns into when he talks about it. Right, he doesn't just sound like a conflicted person who, thinks this is awful, but because of some deeply held belief he has or his own religion or whatever. No, like he sounds like a literally insane lunatic when he talks about it, right?
He goes completely emotionally unstable.
Insane, right?
Yeah.
So I did, several weeks back, there was this weird like bit that got out in the news where someone who was working on the RFK campaign was sort of selling him to people as the best way to get Trump elected is to support RFK. So it wasn't support RFK because he's going to be the next president. It's help get him ballot access and support him as like a hedge to try and make sure that votes are taken away from some weird thing like that. And when questioned about it, he said, well, we work with anybody who's willing to campaign to get us ballot access, right? So even if they have a different end goal, even if their end goal is not to get me to win, if they're willing to volunteer time to get me signatures, to get me on the ballot, we work with them and we don't control their message, right? Okay, so that's kind of interesting way of doing it. if you're a person who votes and believes in democracy and all that stuff, then the conversation could be had. Well, regardless of whatever his disgusting positions are, if the idea is that everybody should get to vote for who they want, then it's fine to sign his thing to get him on the ballot. That doesn't mean that you're voting for him. But Joe Stein just informed us that, like, in some cases it does matter, because if you sign to get him on the ballot, you can't for someone else. I don't know why she would lie about that, though I haven't looked it up. But there's also this, just like, that is deeply sick, right? That either one of two things: someone knows his position on Israel, Gaza, and would go to the pro-Palestinian protest anyway and use that as a ground, or that he cares so little about, like, there's so little care taken to, like, who's working with them, that somehow somebody who doesn't know his position on it is going there and doing that. Like, it's just a gross look, first of all, right? It's like a gross look, but I don't know. There was just so many levels of gross there for me on that one. But I mean, I'm not surprised at this point that everything that every next step he takes is grosser and grosser and grosser and grosser. And this is so far the grossest in some ways.
Well, it's interesting because he just keeps revealing himself to us. You know, he's clearly a politician. He grew up in a political dynasty. He's probably born and bred for this. He doesn't seem to have too much allegiance to, like, integrity or truth or alignment in values or visions for the future. I mean, I get that you're not, like, it's not surprising on any level. I'm surprised that you're surprised by the grossness, because I think it's just so clearly on brand for him.
Well, there's just, like, levels of gross things that I don't think about. And so when it's first brought to my attention that people do stuff like this, right? Like, it takes a minute to get your head sort of around it. And then once I'm like, okay, like, if there's a gross thing to do, he'll do it, right?
What keeps coming to mind is Crowley. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. It's like he's going to do whatever he wants to do.
Well, I think I see it a little differently. To me, it feels like one of two things to me. It feels like whatever they got on him from the brownstone tapes is so gross that, like, there's no requests they can make of him that he won't do. The other thing that it, like, reminds me of, like, a hazing ritual, getting into, like, a fraternity or a secret society, because I don't know if you've heard some of the weird hazing rituals with, like, Skull and Bones and Scroll and Key and stuff like that. There's some pretty nasty stuff that they're asked to do. So it feels like one or two of those things to me. Either someone's got such goods on him, or there's, like, some inner circle of a secret society that he's hoping to penetrate by his activities, and this is what they have taken it.
I mean, I think it's choice A. I thought it was choice B, but I thought Shmuley was it. I'm like, okay, this is the hazing ritual. It's got to be so humiliating for him to go along with this. But then it's just like this never ending.
Well, it's almost like he took over for Shmuley. They decided that Shmuley, like, had gotten a little bit too cartoon-like, and because RFK still looks like a normal person, let's put him out there and have him do all the gross things that Shmuley does. But he looks like, you know, kind of a handsome 76-year-old man. So it's a little different than what Shmuley looks like, right?
Yeah.
Anywho, okay. So there was that. So that was the sort of Jill Stein, but the when I saw that, like, it was both things. Ooh, gross, and then, of course, right? So the shock doesn't last for very long. It's kind of like getting used to the smell of, like, the horse poop in the stable, right?
I like that you get shocked, because it shows that, like, there's still a little bit of hope. There's still a little bit of, like, idealism in there.
I'm very idealistic. I just have learned to not, like, when I stopped voting, it really released a lot of the energy around that for me. So I was able to kind of move around in the information field in a different way without feeling like I had to take a position. Doesn't mean I never do take a position, but there wasn't, like, this, like, something riding on it, right? It wasn't like being on, the postal team with Lance Armstrong, trying to get him across the finish line, even though it was obvious he was doping and, whatever it was. Right. So, anywho, okay. So, but let's just alternate. Let's do that, the thing today. So let's go with your Facebook clip. You want to start there? Where do you want to?
Yeah, let's start with the Facebook clip.
Facebook clip. All right. Bringing it up. And let's get, oh, this is weird. Why is there no,
Or you know what? Do you need me to resend it? I also have the audio here, if that's easier. But let's start with the,
I got it. We're
okay,
good.
cool.
Okay, so how do I do this? Share video? I don't understand. Optimize for video clip, and then go back to basic, and then pick my thing. They changed how
Is this happening on Zoom right now?
Yeah, they changed it. So now I have to restart.
They could lose their job.
How do I make the clip restart?
So you have to refresh the browser.
Refresh the browser. Okay, so let me take the. All right, here we go.
I don't think this is it.
Okay.
This is not the clip.
Yo.
Where's the clip
Do you
then?
want to go back to the one in the chat?
That was how I got here. That's so weird. Okay. Sorry, guys. Let me see if I can
I mean, since that's up, we could do brands.
There we go.
Okay, here we go.
But see, this is what happens. Then
Oh, it's flipping. That's weird.
Is this the right one?
No, but you had it before. Maybe if you go back.
Is that it?
There we go. That's it.
Okay.
Congress threatening them. So there's a lot of pressure. They could lose their job. If the president of Harvard loses her job because of what's seen as an inadequately repressive, policing of these demonstrations, then anybody could lose their job. And what's dangerous about that is that who's going to protect free speech and academic freedom if the college and university presidents are under this pressure and are afraid? Given Congress's hostility to these demonstrations, which are equated with terrorism and Hamas sympathizers and anti-Semitism, that they want these demonstrations to be suppressed. I didn't see any anti-Semitic incidents, and I'm Jewish. I was I was there for a while, and it was kind of welcome. So.
Okay.
Yep.
So real quickly, because obviously, like we're moving towards the new bill, but have you experienced an increase in anti-Semitism in your life?
I've never experienced anti-Semitism in my life. I've also never experienced like bigotry around being in a same-sex relationship or any of these things that they tell me I should be very offended about.
Right.
The only thing I've ever received any marginalization in any way about was like when I was a kid, I was made fun of for being small. Sometimes I was given a hard time because I didn't have a mom in the house. Right. But mostly it's been because I don't hold conventionally accepted opinions about the way the world works. So I'm marginalized for being what used to be called the conspiracy theorist and now is just called right.
Yeah.
Those have been that's been the issue. Right. So I've never had now I have close friends, right, who sometimes will make like Jew jokes or something like that, but like they're kidding. They love me. I know they're kidding, and it is funny, right? Because like the reason stereotypes like go all around is because there's like some truth to them, right? And so like, but no one who I'm uncomfortable with teasing me about that has ever done anything like that to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've never experienced anti-Semitism, not now. No one ever, like we announce weekly on this show that we're two ridiculous Jews from the Valley. I haven't gotten any hate mail. Like maybe some will come now that I'm right. Like
Right.
It doesn't like anti-Semitism, like first, like this ridiculous version of anti-Semitism is nonsense. But like even like the traditionally held version of anti-Semitism, like really is uncommon and almost never happens when it's not sort of ginned up or provoked by something to bring unnatural attention to a situation that otherwise someone would have no idea about.
Yeah. I mean, when I've traveled, I don't think I've experienced like, the only discrimination I've experienced is I couldn't go to Campbell Hall because they'd reached their Jew quota. Which is exactly what this stuff is about, which I find so fascinating. But I've also asked my Jewish friends, and none of them have experienced this. So maybe it's regional, but I don't know what they're talking about. Yeah. All right. So the next ones are audio. So we could just listen with our ears. No, I should probably give No Agenda their due credit.
Is this on the same topic?
Yes, we're staying
cool.
on.
Let's go. We'll stay on the campus protests together for a while because I have an article about that as well.
Okay, cool. I'm trying to share the screen.
It gave you screen share, so it should, but it looks different. So just beware.
Okay. Thank you for the warning. I'll try not to freak out. Everything's a bit slow. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can see that I'm about to see your screen. It's warning me that you have started screen sharing.
Okay.
All right. There we go.
Just next week, on the House calendars, just added that the House is going to be taking up the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act. This is a bill that was actually written in a bipartisan way all the way back in October, after the October 7th attacks in Israel. But since then, it has been sort of dormant. It could get new life now. And what this bill would do, if it became law, is redefine what it means to be incorporated into anti-Semitic acts of harassment. The definition would change to include denying Jewish self-determination to their ancestral homeland of Israel, and also holding Jews collectively responsible for actions of the government of Israel. So in real terms, what that means is certain protest chants that we're hearing across university campuses around the country and at other pro-Palestinian rallies could all of a sudden now become punishable under federal anti-discrimination laws. So potentially this could have an impact right away. Over in the Senate, there's also a similar version to this. We're not sure exactly what the Senate's going to do with that, if it will move along with this House bill. But this all comes in the wake of Speaker Mike Johnson going to Columbia University in that dramatic fashion, addressing some of the protesters directly and on camera, also giving that address. And he said also that universities may end up losing federal funding if they can't control some of the protests that we've been seeing.
Okay, I would just want to play one more and then we can dish about it all.
Well, this bill would do a lot, and it really is a monumental piece of legislation from a bipartisan group in the House and the Senate, led by Jackie Rosen. She is one of the first Jewish women to serve in the Senate, so certainly this has symbolic meaning for her. But
pause to choke on your own vomit. Have you ever heard something so fucking lame?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
This bill would create a point person, essentially a strategic advisor to the president of any administration. This doesn't just tap out with President Biden. It's supposed to be a role in which this person advises interagencies, has coordination not only with the federal government, but also the Department of Education, for example, when it comes to anti-Semitism in higher education, also coming out with a strategy and implementing that plan online as well. Chris, 9 in 10 Jewish Americans feel like anti-Semitism is the highest it's ever been. That's according to a new Pew Research poll from last week. This is something that, of course, has bubbled over after the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel and Israel's invasion of Gaza since, that has claimed many lives.
Okay, for the record, the idea of polls, public polls, were created by Tavistock Institute. Just
shocker. Shocker.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's that. I find it interesting that the whole thing is aimed at the universities. It's even in the languaging of the bill. It's all around education.
So I think it's okay. So there's a couple of things here, right? So I think that it is different to have a protest movement happening around universities than it is to have it happening like around government buildings or in the downtown square. right? Remember, so there's a lot about this scenario that smells like Occupy Wall Street on some levels, but those were happening like in the streets, and like mostly it was happening like in, you know, town squares, like in city squares, or near sort of like the courthouses, and like in downtown LA, it was kind of near the courthouse and all of that stuff. In New York, it was at Zuccotti Park and really close to where Wall Street actually was. But when you're on campus, it's like a different set of rules. It's kind of like a different, especially a lot of the campuses that it started on were private schools. So on some level, like the Constitution doesn't apply as the same as it would on federal property or city property. I'm not saying I agree with that, but right, it's like the, you know, when your parents tell you they're going to wash your mouth out with soap, if you say that word one more time, the Constitution doesn't apply in your living room when you're 6, is kind of like that on some level, right? Now, it gets more complicated when you say, well, wait a second, like there's government, like some of these universities, even if they're private, receive government funds, or the student loans that students take out to go there come from Sally Mae or whatever, that is like a government kind of thing. So there are tax dollars, American taxpayer dollars, that are ending up at these universities, even though they're private. So it's important that they sort of have some of the cover of, well, this isn't exactly just, you know, regular territory in the country. And also they're like, they want to make this a way that they can move to change that, because they want to have a bill that says, you know, anti-Semitic language is not permitted, or kind of whatever it is. So the venues of universities, particularly private universities, but as you can see, it's happening at UCLA and other, you know, University of Texas and stuff like that. They're trying to cover a large sort of swath here, right, with this. What do you got? You're going to show us the bill. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I'm hearing everything that you're saying, but notice it says this in the bill: nothing in this act shall be construed to diminish or infringe upon any right protected under the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States.
Right. So I think this is where we're going to get into some issues with throwing things back to the states in some cases, like in Texas here with Governor Abbott really being, you know, an absolute fascist about this. But also the pro-Israel sentiment in our government is so strong that I think this is something that could probably be tooled into a constitutional amendment. Right?
Well, I mean, are you saying folding in some Israel thing into our Constitution?
So I think the reason that they have to conflate criticism of Israel and Zionism with anti-Semitism is because they're wanting to stop that. So first they have to do the conflation, right? And then you have, it's got to be upwards of 90% of people in the House and Senate who are pro-Zionist or pro-Israel, or at least too afraid to say anything about it.
Totally.
So now we're getting into, this might be the topic that there's the most cohesion about. The two things that the Congress and the Senate always seem to agree upon are war and Israel, right? So they allow wars to happen without declarations of war, and they don't complain about it. And it would not surprise me if this would be the kind of thing that could at least, you know, start to drum up, you know, support for the idea of creating an amendment to the Constitution that conflates anti-Semitic speech and free, you know, that basically says that anti-Semitism is not part of free speech.
Okay, so I feel like let's play the Nancy Pelosi clip, the BitChute clip, because she's talking to exactly what you're talking about. And I think the primary issue is not just support of Israel, it's these people are citizens of Israel.
Correct.
And I think it's important that we start speaking that, because it's very different. You know, they have major skin in the game given that it's their nationality.
Well, it's they've chosen to make it their nationality in order to do this power play, right?
Yeah.
Like this is a very I mean, this is a long play that's been going on, right?
Yep.
Like almost 100 years at this point or more that this has been in motion, and it's starting to make a lot of other things that have happened in our history begin to make sense.
Mhm.
And an article that I have sort of comes around to that. But yeah, let's watch the Nancy Pelosi clip.
Yeah.
Here we go. All right.
And this is from 2019, but I think it's still incredibly relevant.
If you suffer from ear ringing,
Oh,
buzzing,
sorry,
tinnitus,
guys.
or other hearing or ear-related issues, you must see this.
Policy that reaffirms Israel's right to self-defense. In our democratic societies, we should welcome legitimate debate on how best to honor our values and to advance our priorities without questioning loyalty or patriotism. This month, the full House came together to condemn the anti-Semitic myth of dual loyalty and all forms of bigotry with a resolution that, quote, rejects the perpetuation of anti-Semitic stereotypes in the United States and around the world, including the pernicious myth of dual loyalty and foreign allegiance, especially in the context of support for the United States-Israel alliance. I simply declare to be anti-Semitic is to be anti-American. It has no place in our country.
With all of the hullabaloo about Black Lives Matter, all of the hullabaloo around LGB alphabet, do you ever hear them say race to be racist is un-American? To be homophobic is un-American? This seems to be a unique conflating.
Well, this is going to get the job done that those other movements couldn't get done.
Right.
It's
The total enslavement of the globe?
well, that like this getting, I mean, think about how much has been revealed in such a short time about people who were very anti the idea of a protected class when that protected class was gay people, Black people, trans people, or immigrants or anything like that, but immediately love the idea of a protected class of people that can never not only be like sort of spoken out against, but like, you know, can never be challenged about anything without right kind of thing. So it's very when I talk about how they have like they run many programs, because if one doesn't work, they'll just jump to the next or jump to the next. And so they've got their spoon in many pots stirring things up. And I think that like, you know, they're happy to, you know, try the easiest one first or the most loony one just to kind of see if we can get them to go along with this, right? Like the trans stuff is like kind of loony, right? But like in the end, strike at that Holocaust, the Nazi thing that, you know, this thing that still like people who know zero about the Holocaust or Nazism or anything like that get offended if you say anything that even challenges the idea that might be something different than the one sentence they know about it. So there's something about something about the resonance of whatever those words are, like does the same thing as like if there was an actual thing doing the thing, right? So, and you know that from your study of language that there's like words that can be said that the vibration of them, it's not even like necessarily the word itself or its definition, but just the resonance in the mouth and the way it carries or whatever it is. So you want to finish watching this or was that it?
That was basically it.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, so this is what I'm talking about. Like they've been trying a bunch of stuff, right? And you know, this one is, you know, this is the latest thing that they're trying, right? And it's coming at this really weird time where, you know, essentially there's no opposition on the ballot to this position.
Correct.
And so there's very little like And this, in some ways, this is where there's still a part of me that is paying attention to the tract of the idea of RFK being the establishment choice. Because if Republicans and Democrats can't agree upon anything else and they have to come to some sort of like weird, like the way he describes this contested election thing he could win, right? Like they're not going to have to compromise their position on this. And this is seemingly the most important position to 90% of the people in Washington, D.C. And whether that is because they're brainwashed or blackmailed, I don't know, probably some combination of both, right? But this is, there's like, you know, Jill Stein will represent the only person who's going to be on the ballot in probably all 50 states that holds a different position on this, right? But she holds sets of other positions that make her a no-go for every sort of cohort she would have to get support from. So,
well, when you see RFK being the establishment choice for which party, the Dems are not going to take that Israel thing, and the Republicans aren't going to take the climate crisis thing.
What do you mean the Dems aren't going to take the Israel thing? They're taking it.
No, I mean, they're not going to go along. I mean, the voters, the Democratic voters are not going to vote for RFK on the Democratic ticket because of his Israel positions. Those seem more aligned with the values of the Republican Party, who's not going to get on board his meta crisis.
So remember when I told you about the guy that looked like a hippie who was collecting signatures?
Yeah.
I think they've done a good enough job at sequestering people into their own pens, right? And because Joe Biden and Donald Trump will not debate RFK, like RFK has been trying to challenge Joe Biden to a debate for a long time. They're not going to debate RFK, right? And because the Uniparty agrees on that there shouldn't be a third party candidate. So that is also going to hold him in this space where quite literally there are Democrats out there that have no idea about the lunacy of his position. It's really weird. It's fucking weird, right? Like it's weird, but this is what I'm seeing. Like there's a group of people that think he's unreasonable because of his position on vaccines. There's a group of people who think he's unreasonable because of his position on climate. There's a group of people who thinks he's unreasonable because of his position on Israel. There's a group of people who don't like him because they think he's just like a family, political family kind of thing. Only a small group of people have examined all of that clearly and have a fully formed opinion. So you're going to be able to gather a set of people who are willing to put aside one or two or three of those things based on the thing that that they're okay with about him, or they don't even know two of the three things. It's fucking weird.
Have you heard anyone else hop on the Moskowitz connection yet? I'm going to ask this every week.
Yeah, no. So I think we should maybe reach back out to David. I did, I sent him a text saying hello and I hope he was doing well, and he did respond sort of curtly to that. So maybe I'll ask you to sort of ask. No, like even some of the like deepest researchers that I know that get super granular on things that like you could never pay anybody, even like someone who really cared to pay attention to that set of things, have seemed to have missed this. Right. But this is what I call psychedelic rave time intelligence, right? This is like the free association that only certain people's minds, like I'm like the weirdo who's thinking about this stuff. Like, well, I'm dancing at a party because something about the rhythm of the music makes all of these things that seem disparate make sense. And I have the aha moment and I know where to go to look to find the answer. Right. Yep. And so this is like a weird one. And probably this is why they know they're going to get away with this one. Like if anybody ever cares about this connection, it's going to be when it's too late. Right. Because
so freaking heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking, but this is, I think this has been part of the effect of like everybody's able to tune into their own reality based on curating their own feeds. We used to have to all watch the same newscast. We used to have to watch the same newspaper. We used to have, right? Like we were getting most of like 80% of our understanding of reality was coming from shared sources. And then the other 20% was just whatever weird thing we were into off to the side. but a person can curate their RSS feed that into something that might be really interesting to them, but never there's like things in the world that they don't even have any idea exist that are important, right?
Right.
So, and this is also, I think, where like having ADD and being hyper helps me. And even though I wouldn't say you're as ADD or as hyper as I am, any person who's been a gymnast is a little bit more to that side than everyone else who's not. You're able to bounce around between things in a way that would be uncomfortable for most other people. So it makes sense to you right away. And a lot of people went and watched that show I did with David after we brought it back up a few weeks ago, who either didn't see it before, didn't get it before, or didn't comment on anything about it before. It got like a whole other bump of listens, right? And so I think that will sit well for posterity, but it might be that thing that like, oh, well, too bad we didn't know that, a little bit earlier, right?
I'd love Del Bigtree to comment on that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, anywho,
it would be cool if everyone who's tuning in, if anyone's like tweeting or Xing or whatever they call that, like, let's get this out. Like, let's poke at this a little bit. Why not?
Yeah. Yep. So, okay. So did you have another clip related to this, or did you want to do any more bill examination?
No, but the one thing that I wanted to point out was in the bill itself, I won't do the screenshot, it's not that interesting, but they wrote the bill originally in October of 2023, and it's all around Department of Education and students. Were they having such big protests and those big issues in October?
So there was some immediacy. Like, remember there was that whole thing with Bill Ackman, and he was trying to wanted to know, right? So there was like a first set of response, right? That they kind of did all this action, saw what the response was to it, both the public's response to those people testifying at Congress, and also social media, the response to this idea that Bill Ackman was going to send out letters to make sure none of these people ever got hired. Would that be enough to quiet students down or not? Like, there's been a tremendous amount of studying of that going on. And then now there's this second round, and I think we should ask some questions about the nature of this second round, right? Because this is how it always happens. Like, there's an immediate response to something, there's some things learned, right? And then there's like an attempt to like, create a problem reaction solution scenario. And that, I think, might be what this is, right? And that doesn't mean that there's nothing organic within it, right? Because you have to have something organic to animate the thing and give it some resonance. Otherwise, people just, as dumb as people are, they're not that dumb, right? Like, there has to be something happening for there to be anything happening.
Right.
So I think that they got it ready after that first round.
Yep.
Right. And they've been working towards this. Like, how can we create a situation where people will be begging for the thing we want to do anyway? And, some of this begging is coming from donors to universities, apparently. But like, there's probably also even like this simple explanation of like, there are parents who've sacrificed everything to pay their kids' tuition, and their kid has now been kicked out of school. And as parents often do, they are blaming the kid more than looking at the larger problem. So there's all kinds of things right now. There's this is all that anybody's talking about, right? Like, my sister and my dad and my cousins and alternative media people. And my sister, actually, that happened at my sister's school. My sister's a professor at Emerson. And Emerson is a small school, so it's not getting the attention that all of these other schools, but I saw the news coverage from Boston and the article, and it's the same thing basically happened there. And, so this is getting the kind of attention that you need to get to sort of, to try and galvanize something. And they're okay with some people being pissed off about that. They prefer the friction to just everything smooth sailing. Like, friction creates more sort of power for their dark activity or whatever, kind of thing. So, okay. So, I read this article the other night. It was a short article. It's on from Global Research, which is like one of these websites I've been subscribed to for a million years that writes a lot of articles, and it's, you know, it's like kind of interesting perspectives. And it's not a particularly well-written article, but there's sort of like two separate parts of the article that I think are interesting. And so I'm going to read a little bit from each. But what really got my attention was that the article started with an anonymous quote from someone that said, "The whole world thinks that Gaza is occupied by Israel. The truth is that the whole world is occupied by Israel except Gaza. This makes sense as the whole world or its Western leaders are cheering for Zionist Israel, but Gaza and Palestine are defending their turf not to be occupied." So basically, it's worked the rest of the world round to pay leaders off and to brainwash the people. And the only place that has not had their consciousness or their pocketbook occupied by Israel left on the entire planet is Gaza. And I was like, that's exactly right.
Sounds right to me.
That is exactly right. So that caught my attention. Right. And, you know, some of the stuff that he says in the next little bit here, not that important, but then he says, he's talking about how these protests are starting to build into something that was like the anti-war movement or the civil rights movement or whatever it is, a lot of stuff on college campus, right? Private first and then public. And then now it's happening in Australia and France. And then he says, how real is this? A unilateral defense cry for Palestine, not only by Palestine and Arab students, but by students of all colors and creeds in solidarity. Is that what's happening? And then he said, knowing that these largely Zionist-funded universities are likely going to crack down on these encampments, which has already started, students may be suspended. Then all of a sudden appears a more sobering set of news, namely that Soros's Open Society Foundation is funding most of the student anti-Israel protests, as reported 3 days ago by RT.
I was literally just going to ask you, do you think Soros is funding all this stuff?
100%. Right? 100%.
It has his thumbprints all over it.
Correct, right? Like he was big into funding things around Occupy Wall Street, around the BLM stuff, right?
Antifa.
There's always that element there, right? Mm-hmm. And the question is just, did that element create it or did that element piggyback on it? And has it taken, if it's a piggyback, has it taken over, right? That's always the question. And sometimes there's more evidence leaning towards wholly created and more evidence leaning towards piggyback, but okay. So why would Soros, the woke master, suddenly fund anti-Israel come Zionist protests around the globe, of course, with focus on the U.S., divide to conquer, creating false flags, making believe that there is a huge pro-Palestine movement taking place at U.S. universities? It may give university administrators the opportunity to officially, with much fanfare, crack down on student camps on university grounds, demonstrating concerned universities' pro-Zionist Israel stand, naturally supporting their funders, letting future students know what they may be up to in case they decide to apply to these universities. The emerging bigger picture might be that the student protests can be wiped out by the powers that be, easily supported by the system's force of order, police, and military if needed. In which case, Soros's agenda is pro-Israel, pro-WEF, pro-WEF, similarly as the woke movement supports the objective of the WEF's Great Reset and the UN Agenda 2030, right? Okay, and that's the rest of the article is not that interesting. But remember when I said earlier, so, okay, about how now we need to start looking back at all of the things that have happened over at least the last 100 years and go, has this been like a really fucking long play, right? And of course, George Soros famously, or not so famously, because it seems that only some people ever know this, like went around and confiscated property from the Jews in Germany, like during the Holocaust, supposedly, right? Everything is fucking
He's admitted to it. I mean, he said it on camera that it was like the happiest time of his life.
Correct. And people have taken that as being like, well, this is weird that a Jewish person would be against Jewish people, right? Like people have always thought that like that was weird. And then there's people who make excuses of it, like it's some sign of trauma or some kind of weird thing. But the distinction that is so important that is made in all of this is this intentional conflation of Jews and Israel, right? You can be anti-Jew and pro-Israel, which I believe he might be, right? Because Israel, if you're looking at Israel as just like a battleship, right? Like that is there to take over the world kind of thing. Like getting all of this is being used as a way to evade the rules that exist for everything else. So everybody has some level of interest in making sure that they're able to get away with something that you're not supposed to be able to get away with, because they want to run their scam ultimately with that same shield, right? Then, okay, so that makes sense, right? I mean, look at like some of the kind of defense you get when people complain about what Israel does to Palestine. They'll be like, yeah, but you're gay and you should support Israel because they have gay pride parades there and shit like that. So those are all things that he promotes and protects. I don't know what the stance on marijuana, and still he's for legalization of marijuana here, right? And legalization of like weird sexual things. And, you know, that's the whole like, okay, you'll be a slave, but who cares? Because you can be high and horny and, you know, whatever type of perspective on things. So when we look at this, right, he's the exact person sort of we're talking about, right? Like when you are not allowed to criticize Israel, right? Because somehow criticizing Israel has been equated with criticizing Jewish people or harassing them in an anti-Semitic way. It's like the same thing as like, when you criticize the things George Soros does, people blame you for being anti-Semitic. And you're like, well, wait a second. He confiscated property from the Jews in the Holocaust. And they're like making an excuse. He is the same thing as Israel. Like George Soros exists as like an archetype of what Israel is in the world.
Okay, I mean, I can see that last part, but I actually don't think that George Soros is pro-Israel. I also don't think he's anti-Jew. I don't think he has pro or anti or cares. I think he was taken in by a group of Nazis that gave him a purpose, that probably treated him well. If the Jews were being fucked over at the same time, so be it. To me, he seems like some sort of extra dimensional demon. I feel like it's all just chaos because he's gone on record saying he wants to destroy America. Israel is America. It is a satellite of America. I don't think he has an allegiance there. I think he just wants to create as much mischief and chaos and destruction as possible.
I don't think that is in opposition to what I said. I don't think he is pro-Israel or pro-Jew or anti-Israel or anti-Jew. I think he is pro like absolute power and chaos in the world.
Yes. I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you were saying that perhaps he was pro-Israel, even though he was anti-Jew because of what he was doing with the Nazis.
If we understand Israel, if we understand this whole fake story we're told about why Israel is important and all of this other stuff is the cover for people having no restraints on their ability to use power to create chaos in the world.
Yes.
Right? Then he's pro-Israel.
Yes. Then I agree.
Right?
We agree.
Okay. Yes, we agree. Stop the show. Agreeing is nice when it happens, but totally unnecessary. So we'll continue. Right. So it's this, it's the same, we have the same sort of paradox, apparent paradox or conundrum existing within him as we do in the state of Israel. And the answer to that is because none of it is what it seems. And this is not about anything we're being told it's about. This is about interdimensional nonsense. Right. This is about something much greater than the linear history of this conflict. The obsession, rightly or wrongly, with the linear history of the linear horizontal history of this conflict is to distract from the vertical multi-dimensional reality of what this is actually about. Right?
100%.
Okay.
100%. And I wonder if it's just, I mean, this is just like the kindergarten multidimensional version. If it's just loosh collection, the amount of loosh being generated from people's mind control over the Israel-Palestine situation, I'm sure is feeding multiple off-planet species.
Well, there's that. And also this is going to create a long-term distraction for a lot of people, right? There's going to be a lot of people who are going to dedicate the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years of their life, especially if they're getting kicked out of their college. So now they're not going to get their degree. They're going to go become activists. They're going to go to Gaza and try and help. Right? They're going to, and on some level, like, there's a part of me that really respects that, like on some level, right? I do believe there are people suffering, even if we don't really have any idea what the true nature of this is. So there's a part of me that like massively respects that, giving up your comfort to go help with that. But also those brains are now not going to be focused on solving the interdimensional conundrum that is at the crux of what this actually is.
Or even the localized conundrum that we're dealing with in 3D on our own soil.
Correct. The fact that they're losing all of their rights at home and right, like, oh, it doesn't matter if you're uncomfortable because you can't say what you want. These people over there are having their arms and legs, bro. Right. It accomplishes so many things. And most importantly, it's a huge distraction, as everything else is, of the wealth transfer of normal people sending all of their money into a black hole.
Amen. Right.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Is the next thing you have, so just on this sort of related topic, is your Bustamante Tom Bellew clip related to this, or?
No, let's just save it for another time.
Okay, let's hit this one, because this tells you, like, he's laying out all the puppets for the show in this clip right here. All right, here we go.
Here is RFK talking to Ben Shapiro about what Trump needs to do better this time around.
Sorry. Wait, go back and do the Tom Bellew, because he actually says something that is relevant to the conversation we're having. Just play the second one. Sorry about that.
No worries.
It's just one last piece. Go to 55 minutes, 20 seconds.
All right, 55. All right, here we go. Oh, wait, I have to.
It's just like the cherry on top of it.
Is wrong. There's a couple of places where I think it's worth clarifying. So, like I mentioned earlier, I tend to look at everything through a lens of practicality, right? Value, fact, vast versus
Are you at
truth,
55-20?
right? And you made a base assumption about me earlier. You tried to verify it, that I'm pro.
Yeah.
Okay, that was perfect. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure.
So
you can't get it back to
one of the key things that was taught to me by the director of CIA, by General Petraeus, was you don't disclose your position. Because if you as soon as you disclose your position, you've disclosed your position. I was mentioning that to you earlier about information superiority, right? I've never disclosed my position.
I should have asked you 10% questions.
I will disclose my position for you.
Oh, word.
Right? So impact theory exclusive for anybody who cares. I am actually pro-Israel. But the reason I'm pro-Israel is not what I think people will understand. I am pro-Israel because I am very matter-of-factly pro-America. I am pro-United States. The country that I think should remain the dominant superpower in the world is the United States. To aid the United States in that objective, we must ensure the survival of Israel and the Israeli state. Practically speaking, not ideologically, not based on history and justice and everything else, what's happening to the Palestinian people is an atrocity. It's a terrible, sad thing that has forced them into a path of revolutionary terrorism, very similar to what we saw when the United States was rejecting the civil rights movement, when women weren't allowed to vote and they turned to violence. Like, we've seen this before. And it is a sad, tragic thing. What's happened to Palestine, what has happened to Palestine, what is yet to happen to Palestine. All of that being acknowledged, as an American who wants to see American primacy in the future, we have to stand up and support the Israeli state.
Stop.
Having a strategic...
I believe he is being truthful about his feeling. That's like the most truthful thing I think I've heard him say in terms of being honest about his position. Right?
But notice how he caveated with it with, I was always told never to reveal my position. I'm going to reveal my position.
I was waiting for some bullshit, but listening to what he said, and I've watched enough of him now that I understand sort of like where his allegiance and his lies and what his motivations are and that kind of thing. Like, I've done enough character analysis at this point, and whatever. I've been watching him for about 2 years now, a little more than 2 years. So at a certain point, you start to develop a sense of a person. You like lose any judgment you have, and you just start to sort of assess based on what you're observing. So yeah, like they need Israel to guard that portal for them.
100%. But notice the very last line, he said, to ensure the safety of America, we must support Israel. So the mind control,
Totally.
the language, he wasn't saying, I think we must.
Right.
The framing at the end was like, here's what you need to do.
And remember, he was promoting that people should vote for Nikki Haley, and that would be the only reason somebody would ever consider voting for Nikki Haley is if they thought we must support Israel, but whatever, right? So yeah, no, I mean, there's something over there that is meaningful at a level that most people couldn't get their head around.
Correct.
It's not oil.
Correct.
So you tend to find oil in the same places that you find some of this stuff, right? And there's, you know, like Israel is performing the guard services for that and trying to make sure that no one else has access to it, right? And they have decreased the access points, decreased them. And this is the only remaining unoccupied portion of the world, right? Like the entire land of the world has been occupied on some level by America. And at this point, the minds of the entire world have been occupied by Israel, and their pocketbooks have been occupied by, right? Yes, but this is not a solo operation on Israel's, you know, kind of thing. This is super duper complex on some levels, really simple to understand on other levels. Okay, but yeah, no, that was good. Okay, so let's go back to this douchebag Dave Rubin here. I just like, have you seen some of the stuff that Dave Rubin has been posting in the last few weeks? Like, he is just going after Palestinians and pro-Palestinian protesters and things like that in the most revolting, cheapest, dime store kind of nasty way. Like, he really is a douchebag at this point. Like, I feel embarrassed beyond belief that like I was ever even partially snowed by this asshole.
I haven't seen it, but I'm curious to know, because what's coming to mind are like the last, you know, couple months of David Fuller's episodes where he was just like grasping at straws in terms of attacking COVID deniers and whatnot. Like, is it that same kind of flavor, what you see happening with Dave Rubin?
No, I think this is a revealing of the fact that he's a disgusting human being.
Okay.
Like, this was what he was always here to do,
Okay.
right? And he's getting to that point where he doesn't even try to hide it anymore because he's like, it's about to happen kind of thing. I think
Got it.
deep down, David Fuller is probably a decent person, right?
Yes.
Got carried away with how smart he thought he was getting by sharing time and space with these wonderful thinkers. I don't think he's a disgusting person. I think his desperation was from, but I thought I had this right, and I thought we were building this beautiful movement, and I thought I was like, he's not, I cannot imagine him taking cheap shots at people. Like, that's just not him.
Right.
He was mind controlled into believing a reality that is propaganda. That is different than being a disgusting person. Dave Rubin knows exactly what he's doing, and he's a disgusting person.
All right, hit it.
Here we go.
Country. Here is RFK talking to Ben Shapiro about what Trump needs to do better this time around.
To the regulatory capture, I think that even President Trump would admit at this point that he would have to do a much better job in his second term with regard to staffing.
But why do you give him a second term if he's messed it up so badly the first time? He said he was going to do that the first time. If I had been president, I would have done it. He was able, and even when he knew what was wrong, he said, well, I'll never lock down this country. But he got rolled by his bureaucrats.
I mean, I think that a lot of people who support President Trump, myself included, will believe that he got rolled by his own state.
Yeah,
and that's why 2020 was a disaster.
We need somebody in there who will not get rolled by their bureaucrats. The last day my uncle took a vote, and he already knew what he was going to do, the embargo. He said, he took a vote. He said, this is the final vote, and they voted 8-6 to invade. And my uncle said, the 6 is a habit. So what he was saying is, I'm listening to you. You're experts. I value your advice, but I'm going to make up my own mind about what's good, what's best for this country. And
when it comes to deregulation,
President Trump has shown that he doesn't have that capacity.
Okay, so why am I showing you guys that clip right now with RFK going after Trump? Because the point is, if Trump learned from the lessons, and then he can bring in the ex-Dems, and then imagine Imagine you've got Trump as president, you've got Tulsi as VP, you have DeSantis, maybe he goes to attorney general or something, although quite honestly, I'd rather him just stay here in Florida. Now imagine Vivek, as chief of staff going at it with the media. I mean, that would be freaking something. And then what if you had as RFK as head, either head of the CIA or NIH, or just tasked with the job, maybe he's attorney general, or just tasked with the job of blowing apart the agencies. You start building a super team. Then a guy like Elon Musk is like, you know what, I'll help you staff too. And let's, you want to come and America will be the first country on Mars? How about we do that? Guys, we can do it. The opportunity is there. Let them run on the Hamas ticket. Let them run on the diversity, equity, and inclusion ticket where everything is melted down and destroyed. And a guy with dementia is the avatar for the destruction.
So it was fascinating. Okay, so he just,
he just had a total meltdown. He just had a total nervous breakdown.
You know what I feel like? It's time to meet the Muppets. Bum, 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 bum. Like, it's time to meet the puppets. Like, he's lining them up. Like, here's our all-star show, right? Kind of thing. But did you hear him say you can have the pro-Hamas ticket? So he's basically saying that Joe Biden is pro-Hamas, right? Like, the whole thing is so stupid. But on some level, he's high, but this is like a person who obviously has been contracted with the, the pro-Israel tech bro, whatever, angel investor, David Sachs, Bill Ackman thing for like as long as he's been publicly known, even though he went through all these supposed arcs of evolution. This is what he's been working toward the whole time. And he like feels like it's within his grasp. And he's like, look, we got the team. We're ready to go. It's like just...
He was so manic. He was like jumping out of his skin. But also going back to RFK, he had his like Israel mind control personality on. He was completely unhinged. Like when he first started, he was so like respectful and dignified in his unwillingness to shit talk the other candidates. This was just like a total like race to the bottom.
But Ben Shapiro and Dave Rubin, and granted he's sitting there with Ben Shapiro, but it's on the Dave Rubin show, are kind of like higher up on this pro-Israel team than he is because they've been working with that crew longer or whatever. True. So he's like, it's the same thing.
They're actual Jews.
Right. But what was crazy is you have a clip where RFK is literally saying, I'm better than Trump because here's why. And Rubin is so delusional. He's like, RFK is proving that if Trump learns from, right, like the whole,
that's what I'm saying. He's got to be on something. He's unhinged.
They're all unhinged. Those are three of the most unhinged, like.
That's true. That's true.
It's gotten, but it's the kind of unhinged that happens when it's like the delight of like the evil thing you've been working on for so long is about to come to fruition, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, that was the biggest clown show I've ever seen. But did you hear him? He's like, we can even bring Elon Musk on and we can be the first country to colonize Mars. And I'm just like, oh my God.
And Vivek is going to be his chief of staff.
Right.
So it's only failed candidates who are going to be placed in Trump's cabinet.
That was all just an audition to make the super team.
Wow.
You're right, though. That is all failed candidates.
No one was
except for Elon Musk. Right? He didn't run for president, but Tulsi Gabbard has run for president. Vivek has run for president. RFK has run for president. DeSantis has run for president. So yes, it was all just jockeying for spots.
That reminded me of like a 14-year-old who just tried weed for the first time and is like riffing with his buddies about this brilliant idea before he goes and like raids the donuts.
Totally. All right. And on that, let's go to the chat room. Hey, kids. Thanks for Emily for president. No. I don't even vote. I can't be president. All right.
Yeah, you can. I don't think that's a requirement.
Right. Yeah. Okay. No. So if anybody has questions, hi Rafa, nice to see you, man. Haven't seen you in a while. If anybody's got questions, comments, concerns they want addressed, all capital letters so that it's easier for me to separate and pull out. We'll give you guys a few minutes to come through on that, and I'll try and read a few of these to see if I don't know why I just cannot ever read. I'm not good at reading chat.
Hi Thor. Hi Wendy.
Hi everyone.
Hi Jim. Yay.
Everyone is here.
I don't see any questions. I don't see any all caps questions.
I don't either so far. Some people are sending us love.
We're done.
Parts. Yeah. Yeah. So our Steve Passio is correct that it only takes one side to have a war. And I think we really should start asking questions about whether there was two teams in any of the wars of the last 100 years, or if it was always just one team.
I thought we'd already come to the conclusion that it was always just one team.
Yes, on one level, yes. But I think that's been a conspiracy conversation. Like, okay, why do the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds fund both sides of the same, right? It seems like, oh, that's just a sort of corporate interest that can profit off of both. But at this point, like, I think it's ready to move into a more wide mainstream conversation about, like, was this the same blob all along? And was, like, were the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds just bagmen?
Are you seeing mainstream humans start to avail themselves to this perspective?
Maybe not like normie mainstream humans, but like maybe lefty loonies. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right? Like that, those people, like, there's, like, you and I were talking on the phone yesterday, and we were like talking about how this whole thing is like a mind control operation on many levels, because you can't win. Like, you can't, right? Like, it just takes up all your time and whatever it is. So, and yeah, I find myself paying like more attention to this on some level than I should, and whatever. It has the ability to capture lots of people's attention, but it does seem like there is something that's going on with this one that hasn't been the case with all of the other false whatevers, where you're able to see where, like, a person really stands in terms of consistency of their ethics. That is a really good nugget to pull from this exercise or this experience.
Yes.
And that so many people who are like, this has the ability to bring conspiracy theorists, lots of conservatives who have gone a little bit rogue from that part of the party that's happy to send their money to Israel and Ukraine and whatever it is, and people on the far left, anti-war, pro-Palestine kind of thing, in like that they're more open to sharing ideas and information and whatever it is. And so some of this conversation about the nature of Nazis and anti-Semitism and what all of that stuff really is, that was like mostly taboo, and except for in conspiracy circles for so long, like, might be able to start finding some wider audience. I don't know if people are ready for that. But the fact that article, but that whole thing about every place is occupied except for Gaza, and then the way that they connected that to, like, someone can be, quote, pro-Israel, even though they're not pro-Jewish people, Israel being a symbol for something else, right? Then like that, you didn't used to see an article quite like that, that sort of compressed all those ideas into one right there.
Have other conspiracy theorists broken down the is real, that is the name? Like, is that the hub of, like, the reality making mechanisms? Have you done a deep dive into that?
I mean, it's something that even years and years ago I talked about. It's funny that Israel, like, it's like is real. But then in your and my's regular Words podcast the other day, wordspodcast.locals.com, promo code welcome to Words, all one word in capital. If you haven't joined us there yet, please do. Like, I was asking you the question, is reality really, and you're like, wait a second, is reality like that? Now that we're at this place where we're questioning the physics and the metaphysics and the nature of how this computational system apparently that we call reality really works, then when you're saying is something real, that's one thing, but is reality, like, are they literally controlling the nature of reality on some level? Like, is whatever they're guarding there, like, did you see Everything Everywhere All at Once?
No.
And where she went to, like, the dimension where the everything bagel was there controlling all the realities? That was a clue. It's a fucking bagel.
All along.
Right? Okay. But there's, like, literally this dimension she goes to that has, like, this energy that is, like, controlling all the other layers of reality. Like, whatever that is probably there, or the access point to it is there, or it's some combination of that location and the genetics of certain people being there that activate something, or whatever it is. Right.
Right.
So, yeah, but it's always like this. Right? Literally everything is always broadcasting to you exactly what it is. Like, this is Jeremy Narby, Cosmic Serpent, right? Every everything, even things we think of as being like sort of inorganic, like rocks or something like that, right? Everything is at least giving a low level broadcast, like what DNA or something sort of is like a radio that is broadcasting very at a low level, exactly what it is all the time, right? And you can't quite see it when you're looking right at it, but if you can sort of defocalize and see like its frequency or its vibration, you can read the code, right? And so, you know, I think that is, so in that sort of like in that vein of thought, right? Like this is where we should be questioning the nature of reality and why this ridiculous, like, I mean, it's a preposterous story on its face. It has to mean something way different and way more than what it does about
which story?
The Israel story.
Oh, why we care so much about Israel.
Why
Yeah,
we care so much, how it came into being, the Bible stories, the whatever it is. It's preposterous. God is a real estate agent, like, you know, all of this kind of stuff, right? So whenever there's a ridiculous story and they're telling you with the name of what it is, exactly what's going on there, and people are refusing to accept that and keep insisting on this ridiculously intricate, millions of years old story instead of just being like, I think we're supposed to be questioning reality here.
Right. Well, that's interesting when you say questioning reality, because is real is a question. It's not called real. It's called Israel, right? So it's inviting us into that questioning.
Right.
In the very name.
On the same, I think it was either on that Tom Bellew show, not necessarily the one, no, it was with when Andrew Bustamante was on the Danny Jones podcast or whatever. Someone in the comment section said that like the only secret the CIA is keeping is that reality doesn't exist. The world doesn't really exist. And I was like, bingo, like that's kind of like really it, right?
Right.
Like, you know, at least certainly not in the way that we have. I think there's many ways to describe what might actually be going on here. But the thing we've been taught as like is the center of everything, or like how we should, our framework for our existence here should be, yeah, that's all a Sigh-Op. And it's a Sigh-Op at this point, right? Anyhow, all right, let's see if we have any capital letters before we sign off. Oh, I think we do. Okay. Rafa, hi gal's been taking some time away from the YouTube. That CIA guy gives me the heebie-jeebies since the first time I saw him. Yeah, he definitely, he had my, you know, the hair standing up right away when I saw him on Lex Fridman a couple of years ago. But it is interesting. Like I have definitely learned some things about how this game works from listening to him and the way he talks about things and the way people respond to what he says and the things he doesn't talk about, and that, you know what I mean? Like it's been interesting. Sometimes you have to like, it's like going into the negative space to find out like what's actually there. It's like minimal music where like, you're not actually listening to the sounds, you're listening to the space between the sounds. It's kind of like that, right?
Well, the thing with Bustamante, I mean, aside from all the obvious, but like he always knows everything. He knows everything about everything, and yet he retired from the CIA in his, what, 30s? Like, sure.
And he's not even Jewish, dude. Look at that. He knows everything about everything, and he's not even Jewish.
Well, he's telling us he's not Jewish. He probably is.
Right, he probably is, right?
He's got the hair.
Yeah, he got the Jufro for sure. All right. Grateful Dog says, what you thought with Alex AI chat Skeptico? I don't know what that is. I know there's
Hi, Jonathan and Chantal. I just wanted to get that in.
I know there's a podcast called Skeptico. I tried watching it once. It's not my cup of tea, but I know it's very popular. And I don't know what Alex AI chat is.
I don't know what that is.
Okay. Israel is missing 11 other tribes besides the tribe of, there's all kinds of things going on there. All right. I think that's it on the all capital letters. So you guys have one more option, one more chance, going once, going twice. Guys, we love that you come hang with us every Wednesday night, and we have an announcement. I should have made it at the beginning too, but we'll make it now, and I will make a post reminding people. Starting next week, we will be on 1 hour earlier at 5 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Mountain, 3 Pacific. Dani has a new commitment, right? Dani has a new commitment, and actually that time works better for me anyway. So that will be from next week forward, and I'll make a community post about it. So we'll see you here 1 hour earlier next week, and look forward to hanging with you all again. All right. I think that's it. All right, guys. Have a good